Letitia and I met on the first day of college. She walked into class late, slightly out of breath, looked around the room, and sat in the only empty chair, the one next to me. Then she leaned over and whispered, "Do you mind if I borrow a piece of paper?" I forgot my notebook. 8 years later, she would be my maid of honor. I need you to understand what 8 years really means. 8 years isn't just time. It's every phase of adulthood, every milestone, every version of myself that I slowly became. When I got my first job, she was there. When I moved into my first apartment, she helped me carry boxes. When I cried over my first serious breakup, she stayed up with me until 3 a.m. She was there during the pandemic. She was there when my grandmother passed away. She was there when things in my life worked, and when they completely fell apart. Letitia knew things about me that no one else in the world knew. So when I say the betrayal came from the place I least expected, I mean that with the full weight of those 8 years. Marco was my fiancé. We had been engaged for 2 years and together for 4. He met Letitia long after we started dating. Ironically, they met for the first time at my birthday party. I still remember that night clearly. Letitia arrived with a gift and a bottle of cheap wine. Marco had organized the dinner reservation. They shook hands, laughed, talked for a bit. Nothing unusual. Nothing memorable. Just 2 important people in my life meeting each other. And from that point on, they naturally saw each other often. Dinners, birthdays, holidays, random nights out with friends. I never once felt jealous. Why would I? They were the 2 people I loved most in the world. That sentence still hurts to say. 4 months before the wedding, it was a Wednesday night. I was home alone watching a series. Marco had texted earlier saying he had a late work meeting. That wasn't unusual. At around 11 at night, the intercom rang. When I answered it, I heard Letitia's voice. "Hey, can I come up?" When I opened the door, I immediately noticed her eyes were red. She was holding a bottle of wine. My first thought was that she had fought with her boyfriend, Tullio. Their relationship had always been a little complicated. So I did what best friends do. I let her in. I went to the kitchen to grab 2 glasses. From the sink, I heard her say quietly, "Ju, I need to tell you something, and there's no easy way to say it." I froze for a second. Then I slowly placed the glasses in the sink and turned around to face her. She didn't start talking right away. She stood there for what felt like forever. Later I realized it was probably only 15 seconds. But in moments like that, time stretches. Finally, she took a deep breath and started talking. She told me that something had happened 3 months earlier. One night, Marco had shown up at her apartment unannounced. He said he had just had a huge fight with me, which was a lie, because we hadn't fought. Not that night, not that week. According to her, they talked. He said he was confused. He said he wasn't sure about the future. And then, it happened. Just once. That's what she said. Just once. She said it ended almost immediately. She said she realized what she had done and asked him to leave. She said she had been carrying the guilt ever since. Alone. For 3 months. Then she looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "I know this destroys everything," she said. "But you deserved to know before you married him." We sat there in silence. I don't know how long. Eventually, I picked up the wine glasses, opened the bottle, and we sat down on the kitchen floor. We stayed there until 3 in the morning. I'm not going to romanticize that moment. It was horrible. I cried in a way I hadn't cried since my grandmother died. Letitia cried too, but we also talked. In a way that people rarely talk. Honestly, painfully. We talked about Marco, about what I felt, about what she felt, about the mistake she knew she had made. She never asked me to forgive her. She never said things would be okay. Instead, she said something that stayed in my head for weeks. "I'd rather lose you knowing you heard the truth." than keep you as my friend while living inside a lie. At 3 a.m, she left. I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with my phone in my hand for hours. I didn't call Marco. I didn't text him. I didn't do anything. At 6 a.m, I made a decision. It wasn't about Marco yet. That conversation would happen, but on my time. The decision was about the wedding. That morning I started calling vendors, the venue, the caterer, the photographer. I asked questions carefully. What could be canceled? What could be postponed? What money would be lost? Not because the wedding was officially canceled. Not yet. But because I needed to know my options, my battlefield. I waited 2 days before confronting Marco. Not just because I needed to calm down, although I did, but because I wanted to be ready. Ready to hear what he would say. Ready to see if his version matched what I already knew. On Saturday afternoon, he was sitting on the couch watching a soccer game. I walked into the living room, picked up the remote, and turned off the TV. He looked at me confused. I sat down across from him and said, "I need you to tell me about you and Leticia." His face turned completely pale. First came the denial. Short, because it quickly became clear I knew more than he thought. Then came the explanation phase. He said it was complicated. He said it was a moment of weakness. He said it didn't mean anything. I listened quietly. Then I said something simple. "You went to her house. You lied and said we had a fight. That wasn't weakness, Marco. That was a choice." He didn't answer. Finally, I said, "I need a week to think. You should stay at your mother's house for now." And he left. That week was strangely calm. I spoke with my lawyer, organized my finances, reviewed the costs of canceling the wedding. They were significant, but manageable. And every day, I spoke with Leticia. Once a day. Every day. At the end of that week, I called Marco. I told him the wedding wouldn't happen. I told him I needed time to understand what I wanted from my life. And that time couldn't happen next to someone I no longer trusted. He said he could change. He said it was a mistake. He said he wanted to fix things. And maybe he meant it. But I told him something I had already accepted. Maybe you can change. But that doesn't change what already happened. And I can't build a marriage on top of a question that will never disappear. The question of whether it would happen again. The conversation wasn't dramatic. No yelling, no scenes, just 2 adults ending 4 years together. I canceled the wedding. The financial loss was smaller than I expected. Some vendors were understanding. Some weren't. My family was shocked. My mother became furious at Marco in a way that was both intense and completely justified. Marco moved on with his life. And slowly, so did I. But what about Leticia? That part is more complicated. We didn't talk for 3 months. It wasn't planned. It just happened. I needed distance from her too. Not because of anger, but because every time I thought about her, I thought about him. And I needed time to separate those things. 3 months later, she sent me a short message. "I'm here if you want to talk." I read it, and didn't answer for a week. Finally, I replied, "Let's get coffee." That coffee lasted 4 hours. We didn't return to normal. Normal was gone, but we built something different. A friendship that was more honest, more fragile, but also more real. I won't say I fully forgave her, because forgiveness isn't a decision, it's a process. But I understand what happened, both parts of it, the mistake, and the courage it took for her to tell me. Marco? I never saw him again. Sometimes I hear about him through mutual friends. Apparently he's doing well. And honestly, so am I, better than I was back then. which is one of those strange ironies life sometimes gives us. You might find this story strange, because there isn't a clear villain. But real life rarely has clear villains, just people who make mistakes, people who try to fix what they can, and people like you and me, who have to decide what to do with what remains. I chose to keep the friendship and let go of the engagement. For me, it was the right choice.